Okay, so hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Starting Your Immigration Journey in 2026. My name is Abigail, and I work with our partners here at CanadaVisa. I'm really excited to have you all here today. We've been looking forward to this webinar that's bringing together a panel of experts for a long time, and I think the topics that we're going to touch on today are of high interest and really relevant to many people going through or planning their immigration journey. So in today's session, we'll guide you through the key steps of the Canadian immigration journey, starting with immigration pathways and express entry insights from immigration lawyer Olivia at Cohen Immigration Law. That will be followed by language testing guidance from Yvonne at CELPIP on how exam results can impact your application and how to prepare for your language test. And then some practical career building advice from TD guests Nathan and Jerry on job searching, networking, and preparing for success in the Canadian job market. Following those presentations, we'll move into a question and answer period. So I know many of you submitted questions prior to the webinar, and we hope that you continue to ask questions throughout that our team will monitor and pull out. And we're going to get through as many of those as possible in our question and answer period. Just a note, for privacy reasons, we ask you not to share any personal or sensitive information in the chat, as our team will have to remove those messages. So no phone numbers or emails or anything like that. Now I'm just going to introduce our panel one by one, so you have a little bit of context on who's going to be presenting today. So first we have Olivia, who, as I mentioned, is an immigration attorney at Cohen Immigration Law. Her practice focuses on Canadian immigration through economic, business, and family pathways, including permanent residence through the express entry system. She is dedicated to providing thoughtful, strategic guidance to clients navigating complex immigration processes. Then we have Yvonne from CELPIP. Yvonne supports the language assessment mandates of government, legal, regulatory bodies, and academic institutions. Previously, he served as an account director and manager of academic relations for Prometric's English language portfolio and held various roles in education tech and experiential learning. He's a graduate of the Monk School of Global Affairs here in Toronto, and he continues to consult on interdisciplinary research with a focus on citizenship, diaspora studies, and migration. Then we've got Jerry from TD. Jerry's a dedicated member of TD's Great Career Transition team with an extensive background in talent acquisition, primarily in the fintech and financial industries. As a talent brand champion, Jerry has spent the last 3 years helping colleagues navigate their career transition through one-on-one coaching and delivering impactful workshops on job search strategies and best practices. Outside of work, he's passionate about coaching youth basketball and exploring new destinations through travel. And then lastly, we have Nathan, also from TD. Nathan's a proud member of the career transitions team at TD Bank. And for over 4 years, he has helped fellow colleagues navigate career transition journeys, as well as deliver job search workshops on important topics like you'll hear today: resume writing, interviewing techniques, and networking best practices. Prior to career transitions, he worked in talent acquisition for many years at TD, in which he had the privilege to support several areas of the organization, including retail, commercial, corporate, tech, wealth, and securities. Outside of TD, Nathan enjoys spending time with his lovely wife and 2 children and engaging in his favorite pastimes, including watching movies, playing video games, and exploring nature. So as you can hear from those wonderful bios, we have so much expertise on this panel today that you'll be able to learn from, and we have a lot to get through, so let's kick it off. I'll pass it off now to Olivia. Olivia, I think you're on mute. No, we can't hear you. Oh, we got some noise there. Do you want to try hopping off and rejoining with your link, and we'll try that? Okay, we'll just give that a second. Okay, so we'll just get that technically figured out, and Olivia will be back with us in a minute. Okay, it sounds like we have you, Olivia, now.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, great.
Great.
So thank you everyone for your patience there, and thank you, Abby, for the introduction. So with that, let's kick things off and start discussing express entry. So my name is Olivia Cohen. I am an immigration lawyer, as Abby so kindly introduced, at Cohen Immigration Law. And today I will go over what you need to know about seeking Canadian permanent residence through the express entry system. Permanent residence gives you the ability to live and work in Canada indefinitely, as long as you maintain permanent residency requirements, and is the first step to becoming naturalized as a Canadian citizen. There are over 100 pathways to Canadian permanent residence, and we're focusing on express entry because it's the largest, with over 100,000 permanent residents to be admitted each year. Express entry also offers the advantage of faster processing times than other permanent residence pathways. So at a high level, securing permanent residence through express entry looks like what you can see on the screen. So starting off by being eligible, then creating your profile in the express entry pool, competing with other candidates in the pool on the basis of your score under Canada's Comprehensive Ranking System, or CRS, receiving an invitation to apply for permanent residence, and then finally submitting your complete application for PR. So as you can see, when seeking permanent residence through express entry, you cannot apply for permanent residence directly. Instead, you must first receive an invitation before you can go ahead and apply. We can break express entry, or the journey, down into 3 key questions. First, am I eligible? This is the baseline. Do you meet the minimum criteria for one of the 3 federal permanent residence programs within the express entry system? Second, am I competitive? Being eligible isn't enough. You need to know if you're a strong candidate who is likely to be invited, and that depends on your CRS score. Third, how do I apply? Once you know you're eligible and competitive, the final challenge is navigating the application itself, the forms, the documents, and the government portal. And we will be addressing all 3 questions today. So to be eligible for express entry, you must meet the requirements of at least one of the 3 federal immigration programs managed by the express entry system. We have the Canadian Experience Class, the Federal Skilled Worker Program, or the Federal Skilled Trades Program. The most important requirements consist primarily of work experience, education, and language proficiency. If you are outside Canada and not applying under the Canadian Experience Class, you must also demonstrate sufficient settlement funds. We are going to take a deep dive into express entry throughout my section of the presentation so that you can get an overview of how this system works. It's complicated, and that is why we have designed CanadaVisa Plus to give you a simple answer as to whether you would be competitive in the system. And we'll speak more about that at the end of the presentation. Express entry is for foreign nationals who meet the federal government's definition of skilled workers. According to the Canadian federal government, a skilled worker is someone with at least 1 year of full-time or equivalent part-time work experience in an occupation classified as tier level 0, 1, 2, or 3 under Canada's National Occupation Classification System, NOC. At a high level, as you can see on the screen, this is what tier training, education, employment, and responsibilities look like. There's tier levels 0 through 5, as I mentioned, and 0 typically relates to management positions. Tier 1 relates to or covers occupations requiring a university degree, and so on. Here are some examples for each tier level. So as you can see, management positions falling under tier 0, various teachers, engineers falling under tier 1. Under tier 2, you can find plumbers, early childhood educators, and then moving into tier 3, there's common examples of cook or roofer. To determine the tier level of your occupation, you can look up your occupation's NOC code on the government's website. And to be eligible for express entry, as I mentioned, you need at least 1 year of skilled full-time work experience within the past 10 years in a tier 0 through 3 role. For the Canadian experience class, this work experience must also have been gained as an employee within Canada in the past 3 years. In addition to meeting the eligibility requirements of at least one of the 3 programs, you must meet additional requirements to have a valid express entry profile: language tests, and for some foreign nationals, educational credential assessments, or ECAs. All express entry candidates must demonstrate a minimum level of language proficiency in English or French by taking a test from a government-approved third-party testing provider. Language test scores are converted to scores on the government's official scale, the Canadian Language Benchmark, CLB, which assigns a proficiency score from 1 to 12 in each of the 4 language abilities: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. For your express entry profile to be valid, you must have taken an approved language test and have uploaded the results to your profile. The minimum language score required varies by the program you use to enter the express entry pool. Language test results are only valid for 2 years, after which they expire. And it's important to note that if your language test expires before you apply for permanent residence, that you will have to retake your language tests. You will also need an educational credential assessment, or ECA, for any foreign degrees that you wish to count as part of your express entry profile. ECAs are provided by government-approved third-party organizations, such as World Education Services. Without an ECA, you cannot count your foreign degrees towards your eligibility or your CRS score under express entry. And keep in mind that ECAs are valid for 5 years, after which they expire. Once you are eligible and have added your language test results and ECAs, the express entry system will finally assign your profile a score under Canada's Comprehensive Ranking System, CRS. CRS scores range from 0 to 1200, and your score is determined primarily by your age, your work experience, your language proficiency, and your education. If you are applying with a spouse or a partner, a common law partner, your spouse's education, language proficiency, and Canadian work experience will also factor into your score. These factors, referred to as core human capital, spousal factors, and skill transferability factors, can account for up to 600 CRS points. You can then also score additional points for having high French proficiency, Canadian post-secondary education, a sibling living in Canada as a permanent resident or citizen, or a nomination from a province or territory. You can score up to 600 CRS points through these additional factors. We can recommend 4 key actions for increasing your CRS score to make your profile as competitive as possible. First, Strategy 1, maximize your language proficiency. Strategy 2, gain Canadian education. Strategy 3, get educational credential assessments, ECAs, for your foreign degrees. And Strategy 4, gain both Canadian and foreign work experience. And you can see on the screen how each of these strategies may potentially increase your CRS score. When you check your eligibility using CanadaVisa Plus, you will also see a breakdown of your estimated CRS score so that you can identify exact opportunities to increase your score and become as competitive as possible. Let's look at a practical example of increasing your CRS score. So here we have Sarah, who is 25, has a bachelor's degree from a Canadian university, 1 year of Canadian work experience, 1 year of foreign work experience, and English proficiency at CLB 8. Her CRS score is 476 initially, not quite enough for recent draws. But watch what happens when she gains 2 more years of Canadian work experience and improves her English by just 1 level to CLB 9. Her score then jumps up to 556, which would have made her eligible and would have resulted in an invitation to apply in virtually every Canadian experience class draw. The takeaway is that work experience and language are your biggest levers, and even 1 additional CLB level can mean 30 or more extra points for your CRS score. Beyond boosting your CRS score, there are 2 other important ways to increase your chances of success through express entry, provincial nominations, and category-based draws. Under Canada's immigration system, each province and territory has the authority to nominate foreign nationals for permanent residence based on their own labor market needs. And several of these provincial programs are linked directly to the express entry system. They are called enhanced PNP streams. If you are eligible for one of these enhanced streams and receive a provincial nomination, you would gain 600 additional points to your CRS score. And to put that into perspective, the maximum CRS score again is 1,200. So a nomination of 600 points virtually guarantees an invitation to apply. Each province sets its own eligibility criteria. Some require job offer in the province, others target specific occupations or levels of education. There are over 30 express entry aligned streams across Canada, and your CanadaVisa Plus assessment will test your profile against the requirements for each of these streams and show you which ones you may qualify under. Then moving into category-based draws, which are separate from IRCC's general draws. We have what are called category-based draws. In these rounds, rather than inviting candidates purely based on their CRS score, IRCC targets candidates who meet specific criteria tied to Canada's economic and political priorities. And this is a major advantage because if you qualify for a category-based draw, you are not competing with the entire express entry pool, but rather you are only competing with other candidates in your specific category. We've listed the current categories on the screen, but broadly speaking, there are 2 types of category-based draws. First, French language draws, which require you to have French language proficiency of NCLC 7 or higher. And second, occupation-based draws, targeting fields like healthcare, STEM, and education. These category-based draws require you to have at least 6 months of continuous work experience in a qualifying occupation within the past 3 years. Your CanadaVisa Plus assessment will identify which category-based draws you may be eligible for, and that way you can know if you can improve your chances and potentially receive an invitation in a upcoming category-based draw. So now you know about the express entry system, and we do understand that it is very complex. You probably have questions about how to move ahead and how this information applies to your specific case. You're not required to hire an authorized representative when you fill out an express entry profile, but from our experience, people tend to have questions at this stage, ranging from which NOC code do I select to make sure that I'm eligible for a category-based draw, to how do I make sure that I'm maximizing all of my CRS points. We realize that there is a lot of stress and anxiety that comes with this process, and we are able to support our clients and guide them through express entry. That said, we understand that hiring a lawyer can be expensive. Express entry representation can come out to around $2,000. And so at Cohen Immigration Law, we believe that everyone should have access to strong advice when they go through the express entry process. We don't want anybody feeling anxious or stressed about their journey to become a Canadian permanent resident. And that is why we built guided submission. So guided submission is our new product that works in 3 steps. First, we autofill your Express Entry profile using data from your eligibility assessment in CanadaVisa Plus. So you're not starting from a blank page. Second, a human case manager at our law firm will review all of your documents and check for errors before you file your Express Entry profile, not after. And third, when you're ready to submit your profile, our Copilot tool will open a side-by-side view with your verified answers on one side, the government portal on the other, and field by field telling you exactly what to enter to submit your Express Entry profile and enter the pool. Because we do the thinking and you do the data entry, we're able to offer this to you at a fraction of the price. Our guided submission product is currently starting at $495, and we have a flexible payment option of $99 over 5 months. We're excited to offer this product and help as many people as possible on their pathway to Canadian permanent residence. To find out where you stand, take your free eligibility assessment using the link our team has shared in the chat, or scan the QR code on the screen and fill out the form at the end of the webinar. You'll be able to see your estimated CRS score, which programs and provincial nominations you may qualify for, and a clear picture of your next steps. And if guided submission is a good fit for your situation, that option will also be there whenever you're ready. We'll also send this link by email after the webinar, and whether you decide to do it alone, use guided submission, or pursue full representation, with over 50 years of experience in Canadian immigration, Cohen Immigration Law will be here to help. So thank you.
Incredible presentation. I am always fascinated to hear the vicissitudes of the journey that a lot of folks are on. I'm certainly no stranger to that journey. And so what I'm hoping to do here briefly is to outline the ways that CELPIP can help increase the CRS scores that Olivia spoke about, and leave you folks with an idea about the available prep materials and the fact that, I'll say this on the outset, many thousands of candidates have gone through the same journey that most of you are on. And what we're sharing here today is effectively a compilation of some of the best practices that have gotten folks, have helped people kind of move through the journey with a little bit more confidence. First couple of slides, just to get some of the important details out of the way. CELPIP General and CELPIP General LS are the 2 versions of CELPIP. The one that we are most interested in today is CELPIP General, which is the one accepted for permanent residency applications and all of the pathways that Olivia outlined. General LS, which stands for Listening and Speaking, is strictly reserved for citizenship applications. As you can see here on the screen, General includes all 4 components of language testing, is about 3 hours in length, and importantly is done in one sitting, which means that you don't have to schedule your speaking component at a separate date. And also very importantly, you don't have to speak to a person for that speaking component. And the reason why we've decided to do that from the get-go, from the design stage of the test, so that we can remove any kind of apprehension that we may feel when we're speaking to another human being, and so that your answers are recorded directly by computer and rated independently by humans at a later date. Meaning it's an easier experience that doesn't necessarily present the level of apprehension that should really be there. I will note that pricing varies depending on the country where you're testing. What we're showing here is obviously the Canadian price, but keep in mind that that will change depending on where you are. Speaking of which, CELPIP is available in more than 220 test centers worldwide. I'll talk about this in a moment and why that matters. for instance, when you're choosing the test to take, whether or not you have a convenient testing location near you is an enormous factor. In other words, I encourage people to don't limit yourself in making a decision about which test to take based on things that you may have heard from friends and family. It's also super important to know that you have a convenient location near you. And so if you go to celpip.ca, you'll find where all of these convenient locations are. The kind of some details out of the way, I really want to get into the CLBs and how they relate to your testing experience and how you can prepare better to go from a CLB level to another CLB level that helps you with the CRS score at the end. Most folks may be familiar with the fact that the Canadian language benchmarks, or the CLBs that you see on the screen, are the framework for measuring English language proficiency in Canada. Think of them as the national standard for describing, measuring, recognizing English language proficiency for prospective immigrants. And the important thing here is that even though this is primarily used for immigration and citizenship, it also has implications vis-a-vis your employment and access to training and education down the road. The CLBs are, well, they assess 4 competencies: listening, speaking, reading, and writing across 12 levels. Importantly, CELPIP was designed from the get-go to map precisely the CLB levels. In other words, as you can see, CELPIP level 7 equates directly to CLB level 7, meaning it leaves nothing to the imagination. As we saw earlier in the presentation, there are the scores or the CLB levels that you should probably aspire to achieve in order to get to the point where your application is a competitive one, is something in the order typically of CLB 7. There are pathways that allow you to apply with lower scores, but what I would love to suggest to you is, regardless of the CLB level that you are today, and regardless of the CLB level that you may be aspiring for, the following scenarios will kind of help you understand how you can get from one level to the next. Before we do that, obviously some of the pathways that are available to you once you get a CELPIP score are immigration pathways, not exhaustive listed on the screen here. Secondly, and also very importantly for folks who may already be in Canada, you can apply for a PGWP permit with a CELPIP score. In other words, one score gets you a number of potential pathways, including potential regulatory and licensing acceptance for practicing your chosen profession in Canada. What I'm suggesting here is that one score opens up all of these pathways, and the thing to pay attention to is the validity of the scores, which is always 2 years. So you have to speak with your representative, your lawyer. You have to be aware that the time limit exists, and you need to know at which point of the journey you are, meaning that at some point you may have to retake a test if it's about to expire. But the major question here really is always, as I keep saying, how do we go from a CELPIP level 5 to a 6, for instance? And I always point to the CELPIP path to success. As I said earlier, this is a compilation of many thousands of journeys, and everything you see on the screen, I want to stress, is free. Number one, again, think of it as a roadmap, as a suggestion, but all of this prep material and the webinars associated with everything that we offer for candidates includes over 15 hours of free webinars. And we usually recommend candidates to attend the first CELPIP General Overview webinar that you see on the screen. after which we ask that, or we suggest to folks to complete one of the 2 free sample tests. And the reason for that is that free sample test immediately gives you an understanding of where you are on the CLB scale. From there, having now benchmarked where you are on that scale, you emerge with a clear information about whether you are at the CLB 5 or 6 or 9, whatever the case may be. And in order to improve a particular CLB level, this is where the next thing comes into play. The score comparison chart, freely available directly on the website, regardless of whether or not you have you've registered for an account. You simply go to Prepare for CELPIP tab on celpip.ca. And what you get there with the score comparison chart is this interactive tool, which has compiled actual responses that shows candidates which answers correspond to each CLB level, if that makes sense. So think of it this way. If you are at a CLB 5, the score comparison chart will give you answers that other candidates have provided for CLB 5, but in turn, it's also going to give you answers that other candidates have provided for a CLB 6. That gives you a really pertinent way of understanding where you are on your prep journey. And it ties in with another very critical component here, and that is we often get asked the question, how far in advance should I start preparing? And my answer is always, do the benchmarking free sample test in the beginning, understand where you are on the CLB level, speak with your representative or your lawyer to understand whether the CLB level that you are at right now makes you competitive. That outlines to you the number of webinars that you may have to attend or the number of materials that you may need to acquire in order to get to the next level. So if I can kind of point to the journey of starting with the sample test, benchmarking yourself, going through the pathway outlined in the path to success, i.e., avail yourself of all of the webinars that are there because they effectively remove some of the most important, some of the critical mistakes that people make. In a lot of cases, those mistakes are not necessarily a function of your language fluency. In some cases, it may be very useful for you to attend a webinar that dispels myths and actually teaches you how to address the task at hand, rather than necessarily improving your vocabulary, for instance. So these are super critically important. Once you've done that, you may decide that you need additional prep materials. These are all outlined on the screen here, but the one that we find most helpful is the CELPIP Accelerate LS, so the listening and speaking component, which we would encourage you to get for free with the code that you see on the screen here. And just as a reminder of what that includes, I think of it as a self-directed learning program. So once you acquire that in your account, you gain access to more than 30 instructional videos, interactive quizzes, and most importantly, breakdowns and analyses of actual answers. So with an accelerator program like this, particularly when you get it for free, all of the prep materials that have helped people like you kind of go from one CELPIP level to another are very much in your hands. And in order to redeem the voucher in particular, right now, you can always come back to the screen and kind of go through the steps, but it's super easy. Effectively, you go to your account, you either sign up for a new account or you access your existing one, you find Accelerate Listening and Speaking, input the code, and you're off to the proverbial races. It's one of my favorite resources, and that's the one that we always ask our instructional programs and partners team to include in these presentations, because again, what I'm stressing here is the ability to go from one CELPIP level to the next is very much outlined in all of these resources. I'll leave you with just a couple of slides that really spell out the number of webinars that were listed in the Path to Success, so that when you're coming back to the slide deck, you can really understand what's available and how to schedule those webinars, how to attend them. They're always listed on the website. But the point here is 9 webinars, about 2 hours long, always taught by a CELPIP expert. As I said earlier, a lot of the preconceived notions or the myths associated with taking an exam are really answered in great detail. Another one that is useful, particularly for those of you who may be interested in ensuring that they have you're surrounding yourself with an increasingly English-speaking environment. I do this for French, for instance, where I'm really interested in listening to YouTube channels or podcasts or listening to the news when I'm driving. One thing I forgot to mention earlier is that one of the best possible ways of going from one CELPIP level to the next is simply increasing your vocabulary, particularly when it comes to idioms and expressions. For those of you who are in Canada, this is an invaluable resource. I can't recommend it more, in conjunction, of course, with the official CELPIP podcast. With that, I'll leave you. Hopefully this gives folks an impression of the breadth of material that's available, including the Accelerate LS, now available for free for webinar attendees and those who get the deck later. And I just wanted to, once again, be very grateful for the opportunity to present some of these resources to you and to congratulate a lot of you on the journey that you've undertaken. It is an admirable one. And, there's a lot of resources available to you from this team. And you got this and we got you, to put it succinctly. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Yvonne. We'll now move on to our job searching and job prep portion of the webinar. We can't hear anything right now. Not getting any audio. Jerry, do you want to try jumping off and rejoining? Oh, we might. Oh, I think I just got something. Can you try again? Okay. And while we wait for Jerry to rejoin, you can see at the top of the chat, we've shared the link to sign up for a CELPIP account and the code to use in the CELPIP store to access those pre-prep materials that Yvonne was speaking to. Okay, there we go. Jerry, I think we can hear you now.
All right, can you hear me?
Perfect, yes.
All right,
go ahead.
Sorry about that. All right, hey everyone, my name is Jerry. As mentioned, first of all, I learned so much from the two presenters, so thank you for that. My name is Jerry, and Nathan and I are gonna focus on the job search strategies. So let's get right into it. Okay, there you go. So today we're gonna be talking about a few different things. So we'll talk a little bit about the importance of researching and networking. And in that process, how to build your brand and also tips and some of the best practices as you're kind of building out your resume and your interview journey. So let's talk about the research and networking. So first off, what you want to do is you really want to kind of set the tone in terms of knowing that, it is a process. So set your expectation knowing that consistency is the key. There might be some setbacks along the way, but it's the consistency, and it's being true to the process and setting out a good foundation and laying out the groundwork is what's going to help you. So what do we mean by laying out the groundwork? Well, let's talk a little bit about that. So first, what you want to do is to start building a networking plan. So, and that could simply mean you start building out a list of people that are in your network, which includes people that you may know directly, but also people that are in your network that you may not know directly, right? So the importance is that you're targeting folks that are in your field of work. So you're doing it with intention. So a great tool for that is LinkedIn, and we'll talk a little bit about LinkedIn in the next couple of slides. But before that, I want to just kind of dive in a little bit on networking. So what is networking? As most of you already know, it's really an exchange of ideas with others, right? It's about, as it says here, about establishing relationship. And then I think the key is to regular communication and mutual benefit. So again, it's about regular communication and then a mutual benefit for both parties, right? And one of the biggest benefit of networking is that it allows you to discover the hidden job market, right? So there is such a thing as a hidden job market, and the data shows that, yes, what you see on the job boards is very real. Those are excellent jobs to apply to, but there's also a big portion of the job market that you're not seeing on job boards. So the idea is to discover some of these hidden jobs through networking. And that's why we're so passionate about, why it's so important in your job search to network. Okay, so now in terms of networking, take it one day at a time. So develop your networking plan. As mentioned, it's about, take your time to build a contact list. Who's in your network? Who's in your field that you're looking for, and be purposeful, as mentioned. And so you can narrow it down. Now, great news. Maybe you've gotten someone to meet with you to chat a little bit about their expertise. What you want to do next is prepare for that meeting, right? Develop an elevator pitch, which is basically just a statement when they say, tell me a little bit about you, right? Focus on, you want to maximize those conversations. So think about a few things that you're really passionate about, that you're really good at, and be authentic. That's the next point here in that journey. It's okay if you've never done it, or if you haven't done too much networking, just be honest, saying, you're in the market to gather a bit of information. You love the background of this individual, and you just wanted to kind of learn a little bit more about them from their perspective, right? And then finally, building that professional relationship. Again, it goes back to multiple communication, consistent communication, and a mutual benefit. And that's how you build great relationships that will help you along your career, your journey. So again, stay motivated, set your expectations, and take breaks if you need it, and also volunteer. Sometimes that's another great way of networking. So in terms of as you're looking at your network, it's important to also think about your personal brand, right? So what is it? And then we'll talk a little bit more about sort of how to create your LinkedIn account. I'll give you a few tips on that one. Okay, first, what I would suggest is it's going a little too fast. Okay, so what I would suggest is ask a manager, a previous coworker, a friend, how would they perceive you? How would they describe you? And then use that to build your personal value proposition, what you're passionate about, and what your skills and how people perceive you, to able to put a profile together. Now, when you're building your profile on LinkedIn, I'll give you 3 main suggestions. You want to be concise, you want to be enticing, and then you want to be factual. So concise, you don't want some too long or too short of information on your LinkedIn account. And enticing, so you want to make sure that if you're looking at it from the lens of whether you're looking for a project manager, a fraud analyst, or whatever it is that industry leader, is it attractive to that particular field of work? Okay. And then factual, you want to stay with the facts. It's about highlight the skills that you currently have. Don't embellish. Just stay with the facts and things that, you know, really makes you unique as a professional. And then, you know, on the About Me section, that's a great section to put in a little bit about, show your personality, show a little bit, you can personalize a little bit more on LinkedIn and show your achievements, show the things that you're really proud of. And then some other best practices, use a professional photo that's welcoming, that's inviting. It's also a good idea to put in like a tagline, maybe under your name, for example, digital marketer, or some people will put like a line, turning customers' needs into a meaningful solution. So those are all, this is kind of like to entice the person to be like, oh, okay, this person is a digital marketer. I want to read a little bit more because that's what I'm looking for in the market, right? And then write your story, write a story that kind of builds your online brand. Use keywords. Don't overuse the keywords, but use keywords that you feel that are relevant to your skills and the industry. And then last but not least, I want to kind of just mention, stay optimistic. Again, it is all about consistency, and not everything works every time, in terms of like, sometimes you may have to tweak your approach for a different area that you're looking for. So it's all about building, and then don't forget to build that list. And it's more about quality over quantity. So it's not about, hey, I have 25 people or 50 people. It's like, how do I narrow down and build a list of folks that are going to kind of help me throughout that journey. So with that, I'll turn over to Nathan, who's going to kind of walk us through a little bit more on some of the interview and a little bit more on the job search strategy. Over to you, Nathan.
All right, excellent. And just a quick check, can everyone hear me okay? Thumbs up? Yeah, we're good. All right, awesome. Thanks very much. Some really good information from all of our presenters today. Really do appreciate that. And I love the theme in there of staying optimistic and staying on course. I do have some of that theme during my presentation as well. So I will, in the interest of time, I will stay high level here for resume and interviewing. And if you do have any more in-depth questions, feel free to ask those afterwards. And Jerry and I would be delighted to answer those for you. So in terms of resume writing, I'm just going to go with some high level universal tips that you can find, on the internet through, say, AI, ChatGPT. These are sort of the ones that, I've found that are really good to be aggregated together, that have also, as a recruiter over many years, have found these to be very effective when I'm selecting successful candidates to move from application round into interview. So the first one for your resume is that clean layout. Contrary to popular belief, the most important part of the resume is the content itself, right? The responsibilities you've had, the skills, the qualifications, not the visual style, right? So you want to ensure that your template that you're using for your resume highlights that content and that it does not distract from it. The reader should be able to easily assess if your qualifications align with the role. So you want to avoid fancy fonts and graphics that sort of detract from that wonderful message and your amazing storied career and skills. You want to keep that resume 2 pages in length. The reason why I say that is there are studies out there that I can attest to in terms of being a recruiter that suggest that the average time a recruiter or hiring manager spends reviewing a resume is approximately 30 seconds. And I know that's a bit staggering, and that's not every resume, right? When they get towards the end of the process, they'll be looking at them a bit closer. But in those beginning stages, they go fairly quickly reviewing through. And as such, you want to ensure that your resume is a snapshot of your qualifications, not a holistic picture. You can save your holistic picture for LinkedIn, as Jerry was talking about earlier in the presentation. That is a wonderful centralized repository for all of your incredible accomplishments, skills, and abilities, whereas the resume, of course, is a specific snapshot that is to align with the particular role that you're applying to, right? That's why you want that 1 or that 2-page resume. And as you can see on screen, there's a great example of a 1-page resume for you. Another tip here is to be specific, right? Think about the specific job you're applying to. As I mentioned before, that customization process is absolutely key. It elevates a good resume to a great resume and ultimately builds up your incremental competitive advantage, right? It gives you that advantage over the other applicants because you've taken the time to research the company, research the role, know it inside and out, and what they're looking for. And then you can go ahead and customize your resume so that it aligns with those pieces, so you're connecting the dots for them. And when the reader, like a recruiter's looking at it with 30 seconds, they immediately check the boxes. Check 1, 2, 3. Oh, they have all the must-haves. Let's get them in for a conversation. This looks fabulous. So the next one down is spelling. I know that's sort of rudimentary, straightforward. With the spelling piece, though, it can be a little bit, your word processor can take care of a lot of that automatic spell check, the grammatical pieces. However, sometimes you have jargon, technical jargon or acronyms in there. So it's good to do a manual check, and it's great for that. But also it's twofold in that it will allow you to become more familiar with the material on your resume. The more intimately familiar you are with your qualifications, your resume, that wonderful content, the more you're able to speak to it in an interview, a networking conversation, and it will really allow you to set sail through the application process. Now, the next piece is being clear, right? You want to ensure that the content is clear and concise for all the reasons I mentioned before. There's limited time for the recruiter, hiring manager to review it. They need to be able to assess really quickly how your qualifications align with the core requirements of the role that they're recruiting for. So that's where your wonderful preparation on the role, the company come into play, doing a little bit of self-assessment, right? Thinking about, where am I at this juncture in my career? What do I have to offer for what I just researched on the role in the company? And then connecting those dots. And don't be afraid to use that technology, right? ChatGPT is out there, Microsoft Copilot, generate some ideas. You don't want to copy that stuff verbatim. You want to make sure that you just use it as an idea generator and then put it into your own words. But once you do, you're really going to have that wonderful familiarity of your brand, your messaging, that great content, and you'll also have a lens on what's happening in the rest of the world, because AI is going to be drawing millions and millions of data points from all sorts of best practices, right? So it's a great tool to use, but again, always put it into your own words and capture your own tone. The last piece is to quantify. This again builds your incremental competitive advantage when it comes to a resume. It really takes it from good to great, and it will catch the eye of the recruiter every time, because not only can they see that you've done that particular responsibility, skill, or ability, but they know that you've done it well. And that really does show the proof in the pudding, if you will, and it takes it to the next level and builds that advantage for you. So I'm just going to move on to interviewing real quick. The three main stages of interviewing, of course, are preparation, delivery, and then follow-up. And of all three of these parts of the process, the first stage, preparation, is always the most important, because it sets you up for success and it really imbues you with confidence as you move into the interview itself. So in terms of that step, you want to ensure you research the role, the organization, really identify what are they looking for, what are those key competencies, and then with that, get to know your brand, your strengths, your accomplishments, and how does that align, right? How does that align with those things that they're looking for? And then you want to devise a script for yourself. What does your practice script look like? Where are you going to get the questions to imbue it with? Well, you can go back to technology, AI, and say, hey, ChatGPT, can you let me know about some great practice questions I can use for this type of role? And you can upload the job description right there. And you can try a myriad of different prompts in order to get down to a wonderful practice script for yourself, so that you can feel very confident when you get in there. And once you have that line of questions for your practice script, go ahead and add your own answers in there using the SAR format. So situation, action, results. It's a very familiar format for Canadian interviewers. They'll recognize it immediately, and they'll be able to extract value from it and be able to assess whether you're a good fit. So behavioral questions, you can answer them with situation, action, results. And then other than that, you get some strong references ready. You can bring them in with you if they're requested. You can also devise a list of questions for the interviewer, because you want to assess that it's the right fit for you just as much as they're assessing that it's a fit for them, right? We're going to move over to delivery real quick. So with delivery and interviews, you want to build that rapport, because even if it doesn't work out, as Jerry was mentioning, we've heard that, motivational idea of optimism and staying confident throughout it, even if you're getting some rejections. Building rapport is so important because at the end of the day, even if you don't get that role from the interview, you're adding someone new to your network, and not just anybody. You're adding somebody who has a line of sight to roles you're interested in. What better person to add to your contacts? And they might know other people that you can delve in and do informational interviews with. So again, don't get discouraged if you don't get that role. Look at it as an opportunity to enhance your network. And as Jerry was saying, there's a very high probability that your next wonderful role that you're going to get is going to come in some way, shape, or form through your networking. It is the most effective way to get that next role. Other than building rapport during the interview, you of course want to use those stories I mentioned, using situation, action, results. You want to remain positive. Even if you're asked a negatively worded question, try to reframe it, remain positive with it. Be brief, right? You don't want to have those run-on sentences. You don't want to be too vague either. To find that sweet spot right in the center, to say the most with the least, it all derives from the great preparation or research that you do prior to that interview. That first phase is absolutely essential. Knowing the company, right? Knowing the role, knowing the line of business, all those pieces will help you to understand how to say the most with the least, how to add value and connect the dots for the interviewer so they can understand why you're a good fit. And the last piece I'll mention is virtual interviews. We've been in this virtual environment for so long, but a couple quick tips, show up early, ensure the technology works, make sure there's no distractions in the background, make sure you're well lit. Those pieces, I'm sure you've come to be accustomed with, but those are, some general pieces. And first and foremost, I would say in a virtual interview, in any interview, have fun. Let your enthusiasm, your passion shine through. You've done all that great preparation. You've done the research. You've practiced. You are amazing. You're going to be excellent in there. Allow that fun to shine through, right? That enthusiasm for the role that you did all that research in. This is where you want to be. That is the role you want to get. So have a lot of fun in that interview. Take a deep breath, let the oxygen flow, and have a lot of fun. And the very last thing I'll mention here, I'm just going to go over to our last one is the follow-up. So with the follow-up, it's good etiquette to just have a quick follow-up thank you note to the individuals you were interviewing with. Try to get it to them, a brief note within 24 hours of that interview. It can, obviously include the gratitude for the opportunity to interview for such an amazing role that aligns with your career plan. But in addition to that, reinforce your interest and that enthusiasm for the role, right? Or the love for the organization or the industry. Let that shine through even in that follow-up note. And a nice forward-looking statement to top it off, and you've got yourself an excellent interview process. So again, thank you so much for the opportunity to present here. I really do appreciate it. And as Jerry and our other guests were saying, it is about that optimism, staying confident. You are amazing. You're taking all the right steps simply by virtue of being here, and there's great things to come for sure. So thank you so much for that time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all of our presenters. There was, I know, a lot of information there, and I know that it can feel overwhelming, but as Nathan has been saying, and as I saw someone say in the chat, it is important to remain optimistic and positive throughout this whole process, and there are resources and people to help you, like the presenters that we have today. So I know it's already past 12. We do want to answer a few questions, so we'll get to a couple questions per presenter. And just as some reassurance, I know this was a lot of information. We are going to be sending you both the slides and a recording of the webinar after, so you'll get the chance to review it and look back at maybe anything that you missed. So to start with a question for Yvonne on language testing, how far in advance should candidates plan to take their language test if they're aiming for express entry in 2026?
I was kind of hoping for a similar question because I touched upon it a moment ago. The short answer to that is be mindful that you're entering, let's say, the express entry pool or submitting your PR application. That would dictate the timing and the required time for preparation. A lot of the folks that we work with would typically allow for something like 3 to 6 months. This is not set in stone, but in a lot of those cases, that gives you enough time to prepare, to book slots depending on where you are, which location, and the availability of testing. That's another very important consideration. Book in advance because sometimes there are busier times and a lot of bookings that you may not be able to score the exact date that you want. So that's another important consideration. And as I said earlier, once you do your benchmarking sample exam, that's going to dictate how far in advance you need to prepare. Guideline again, 3 to 6 months, but check availability of testing and check where you are with the application process itself, and make sure that the score that you receive today is still going to be valid for the pertinent pathway that you're on.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Yvonne. Then a question for Nathan or Jerry. How important is a cover letter when applying to jobs in Canada, and what maybe is one tip to keep in mind when writing cover letters?
I could jump in on that one. That's a really good question. I think the value of the cover letter has sort of shifted over the years in the Canadian market. I'd say across Canadian hiring practices, a cover letter is not always mandatory, but it is often, highly valued and can be a competitive differentiator, right, in reality. And I always recommend the cover letter because it can, be your personalized introduction. It can demonstrate motivation. It can add clarity. It can indicate your communication skills, and also that key alignment with the role that ultimately builds your competitive advantage over the other applicants. So it's great for application health. I would say include that cover letter.
Great, thanks so much. Okay, so a question for Olivia. What are some common mistakes that you see in spousal sponsorship applications? Maybe just one most common that could be easily avoided.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So this goes for spousal sponsorship applications and all PR applications, really. But basically, filling out forms incorrectly, filling out the incorrect form, missing fields in certain forms, or accidentally entering incorrect information. This can often lead to an application being returned. Not necessarily a refusal, although there's always a risk of that as well. But obviously, having a returned application requires you to go through the whole process and resubmit again. And so making sure that all the forms are being filled correctly and that they are the correct forms is key.
Great. Okay, we'll try to get to maybe a few more questions before we end our presentation today. Okay, we have a question on interviewing. This question is, how can candidates demonstrate a cultural fit during the hiring process?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I can take that one. So that's a great question. One thing I would say is trying to find, research the company, research if let's say, for example, you're interested in TD, research a little bit about TD. And I'd say find a connecting story. Find something that you're truly passionate about, whether it's a customer, whether it's a product, whether it's AI. Find out what TD is doing, getting themselves involved in, and if that connects with you, your values, let that shine in the interview process. Let that shine in your how you present yourself and have conversation with whether it's your resume, whether it's on your LinkedIn, or where if you get an opportunity to do an interview. That's how I would say in terms of like whether they'll see, okay, well, this person not only has good experience, but they've also have their values are aligned with their organization. So that's how you would kind of showcase your cultural fit with that organization.
Great, thank you. Yvonne, someone has asked, is it worth retaking a language test, and how should candidates decide if and when that makes sense?
This is a fantastic question, and I'm not just saying it because it's about critical thinking. I always look at this question from the standpoint of return on investment. And what I mean by that is several scenarios. Let's say you've taken a sample test and you know that you are at a certain CLB level. And for one of the components of the test, let's say listening, you're just 1 or 2 points shy of making sure that you can go to the next level in that particular component, which in turn will increase the entire score and make your overall application more competitive. This would be a perfect example of a time when you would consider retaking an exam. In other words, if you feel confident that you can authentically increase your chances of submitting a great application with a higher CLB level, that would be one. Secondly, unfortunately, there are those instances where you're in the process of applying and your score is about to expire. I would encourage folks to retake the exam to make sure that that validity is still there for whatever other administrative and legal issues need to take place. That's another consideration. And lastly, if let's say you've been in the country, let's say you're in Canada, and just by virtue of improving your language proficiency, at some point you decide that it might be useful for you to increase that score, I would recommend doing that at that point. So in other words, think of it only as a strategic tool rather than a necessity or approaching it from that kind of more negative aspect.
Great, thanks so much, Yvonne. Olivia, we had a lot of questions submitted before the webinar about immigrating as a doctor. So one of these questions was, I'm a doctor and want to immigrate to Canada. What are the options for me? Are you able to speak generally to that?
Yes, and so when looking at immigrating to Canada as a doctor, there's two key components that you want to look at. One, the immigration side, but then also the licensing side. And that the licensing side will be specific to whichever province or territory you end up settling in. On the immigration side, which is the side that I can really speak to, doctors who qualify for express entry would also likely qualify for express entry category-based draws, specifically the ones for healthcare and social services occupations. And then there are also specific PNP streams that target doctors and other healthcare occupations. So there are great permanent residence pathways available to doctors. And then on the licensing side, that will require you to identify the province you intend to settle in and then dig deeper, do some research to figure out what the licensing process is for you to be able to practice in Canada.
Great, thanks so much. Yvonne, we've seen a few questions in the chat just about the access code, the offer code for free materials. Can you just walk through that process one more time? And we're going to pin that link to sign up for a profile and also the code in the chat as well. But Yvonne, if you can just go over that process one more time.
Am I okay? Yeah, by all means. Can I revert back to the slide? Is that okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, just bear with me for a very quick moment here, folks.
And we're going to get this link and the code back up for everyone. So you can.
While we're getting there, step number one, if you don't already have an account on celpip.ca, create an account on celpip.ca. Once you're there, you can look for the CELPIP Accelerate LS online, listening and speaking online, in the store. You then add the product to your cart. Sorry, I'm still scrolling, and enter the voucher code directly as you're checking out here. And I'll refer folks, whoever may be listening to this or watching this later, here is the actual slide. So create an account, go to celpip.ca store, find CELPIP Accelerate Listening and Speaking Online, enter the product to your card, and at checkout, enter the code that you see on the screen.
Great, perfect. I see someone, Joshua says he's already used the code and it worked, so that's great. Okay, and we have it pinned there, so you can visit the link and use the code. And we will also be sharing the code to your email after, so don't worry if you can't note it down now. You'll get that code in your inbox after the webinar. Okay, I think we probably have time just for one more question. So let's do this one. It speaks to a couple of the different things we talked to for Olivia. Does someone need a job offer before coming to Canada under the Federal Skilled Worker Program?
So the easy or the short answer to that question would be no. There is no job offer requirement, especially for express entries. Three main federal programs: Canadian Experience Class, Federal Skilled Worker, and Federal Skilled Trades operates differently. So I'm just speaking about Federal Skilled Worker and then the Canadian Experience Class. Job offers would really only open doors towards the provincial nominee programs. And so federally speaking, no job offer required. If you do receive a job offer, it becomes very interesting to explore provincial programs more thoroughly.
Great, thank you so much. I think that brings us to the end. I know that there are questions that you still have and questions we didn't get to. So a few things: you're going to get the recording and also the slides after this webinar. So I would encourage you to go over that material. You can also visit our site, CIC News. That's just CIC News, that I'm sure many of you are familiar with, where you can research any of these topics, and our content team has articles on them. And then, yeah, we really encourage you to use that language test code for free prep materials and explore guided submission from Olivia's portion of the presentation. And you'll have all that information in the email that you'll get after. But thank you so much for everyone who's joined from around the world. We loved having you. And thank you very much to all of our presenters for taking so much time to prepare and answer so many questions. I'm sure we all learned a lot from that in the chat. So thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.